Hey, good evening. This is Tracy Gibbs, Chief Science Officer for LifeWise. We are going live. So let's get started. We're going to jump right into it. And tonight's particular training is on cognitive enhancement functions and what is clarity. Clarity is one of the products we have here at LifeWise, and it's a strip that I happen to take 2 or 3 times a day. There it is right here. I already took this one before, so I might have to get a new one here. If I take clarity before bedtime, though, I can't sleep because it just really helps me focus, and it really, I get real creative when I take it. But today we're going to talk about why that happens, what are the active ingredients in clarity, and how they can assist with cognitive enhancement, focus, and clarity. But before I start that, I did a little bit of internet searching to look at different cognitive enhancing statistics in the United States. Not cognitive enhancing, I should say cognitive malfunction, because we're seeing this more and more among our children, especially nowadays. In fact, this first statistic I'm going to share with you typically starts out, or signs start out, when you're a child. I looked at 1980 statistics when I was 10 years old. So when I was going to elementary school and was in 4th and 5th grade, I went back to that time on the internet and had AI help me look at autism statistics in 1980. Because I hadn't heard of autism. I don't even think I recall hearing about autism until my late teens. But the statistics were there and I found them. And did you know that in 1980, only 1 out of 100,000 people had been diagnosed with autism? Today, it's 1 in 36. Did you guys hear that? 1 in 100,000 in 1980, so 40 years ago, to 1 in 36 today. Now, the internet states the main reason is because of increased diagnostic tools. I'm sorry, does anybody know of any diagnostic tools to diagnose for autism? No, there's no tool that exists. There are diagnostic procedures, perhaps, or a series of questions where you can, look at someone or observe someone and see that they might be on the spectrum. And by the way, this has nothing to do with kids on the spectrum. This is diagnosed with autism, all right? So it's gone from 1 in 100,000 to 1 in 36. I remember 10, 11, 12 years old. If you had autism, and I'm going back to that age group, what we would call it, there was special ed classes back then. And in my entire school, there was maybe 6 people in special ed, and the majority of those had Down syndrome, but there was 1 or 2 that didn't have Downs, but had things that I would consider today would be autism. And yet it was rare. Again, majority of special ed students were Down syndrome. But there might have been 1 or 2 that I would consider as autistic now that I know what autism is. But today there's 1 in 36. I definitely believe it's because of things that are in our food or maybe things that are not in our food. The link to immunizations is just too high to ignore. Even the president of the American Pediatric Association said that. Looked at stats regarding ADD and ADHD ratios from 1980 to today. And that's even incredibly nuts. It was 1 in 36,000 kids in 1980. And ADD was a diagnosable condition. I didn't know that. I never heard of ADHD or ADD. I think it was in my early 20s when I first heard that word. But apparently it did exist, even though I was probably ADD when I was a kid, but was never diagnosed with it. But now it's like 1 in 14. Again, crazy statistics, 1 in 14. And again, whether that's misdiagnosis, because I think a lot of that goes on with ADD and ADHD, or whether it's, again, something in the water or something in the food, I don't know. But I do remember in about 2003, I came across a pediatrician here locally out of Sandy, Utah. Her name was Dr. Cynthia Kaur. And I had a sit-down conversation with her. We were looking at formulating a product together for children. She had done a study here in the Jordan School District, which at the time, again, was one of the largest or most populous school districts in the United States. And I'm not sure what her role was in that school district. I know that she was a pediatrician, but I remember from our conversation, I think it was again 2002, 2003, where she said she was opposed to prescribing Ritalin to ADD, ADHD children. And she had conducted a clinical study where she took some of these children who had been diagnosed with ADHD or ADD, And she had simply focused on hydrating them. Hydration. She was making them drink 2 8-ounce glasses of water while in school. And she found that all of the children, and again, this, I can't cite that she did an actual clinical study. I'm just citing her words, that as she was working with these children, all of the children who took 2 8-ounce glasses of water during the school hours, their ADD symptoms completely disappeared. I do believe hydration is super important when it comes to cognitive function. In fact, it's actually one of the symptoms of dehydration is lack of mental clarity, right? So maybe a lot of ADD and ADHD can be solved just by proper hydrating. But what I'm going to talk about tonight is the fact that, number one, these statistics are outlandish and shouldn't be happening. And number two, I'm going to discuss ways where we can actually use nutrients and things like hydration, just water, good clean water, to perhaps combat and maybe even win the war that's happening with these autistic children or children and adults with ADD, ADHD. So let's talk about a major nutrient that is in clarity. I happen to have one of the old packages here, but our new packaging is much cooler, but it's the same thing. It still says Clarity by LifeWise. But there are some wonderful ingredients that are wrapped up in this tiny dissolvable oral strip. I did a training last week where I talked about how amazing these dissolvable oral strips are. You just place them on your tongue and they melt in your mouth. One of the cool ingredients that I have on this strip, and I would love for you guys to write this down or put it in the comment, is Alpha-GPC. The GPC part, glycerol phosphocholene. It's really hard to pronounce, and it's really hard even for a scientist like me to say, but we don't call it that in our lab. We call it GPC, okay? It's commonly known everywhere as Alpha-GPC. If you want to search it on the internet, just type in Alpha-GPC and it will come up. Alpha-GPC is found in the human body. It's when you eat fats, when you eat healthy fats like DHA, EPA, fats from animals, fats from plants like avocados, olives, things like that. Your body breaks down those fats into usable tools, and a lot of those tools go to your brain, and one of those fats that your body breaks it down into is Alpha-GPC. And Alpha-GPC literally is like pure food for your brain cells. It also helps with hormones and other things. Fats are very beneficial. One of the problems we have in our society nowadays is we've become a fat-free society. I know when you talk to doctors, they'll say the opposite. Oh, we eat too much fat and that's what causes heart disease. And that's bullcrap, and it's been proven bullcrap. There's one that's called the cholesterol heart hypothesis, dietary sense and nonsense. I believe that one is by George Mudd, Dr. George Mudd. He's a retired cardiosurgeon, I believe. There's another one called the scam of the century. He's a retired cardiologist. So you have, of course, all of these retired colleges who are now exposing the lies out there about fats. Fats are good for us if they are unprocessed, okay? Whether it's a vegetable oil that is not hydrogenated, not processed, so in other words, like virgin, extra virgin olive oils, not cooked. When you cook with olive oil, you made it into a bad fat, so use it in your salads, things like that. Coconut oil, palm oil, those are saturated plant fats, so you can cook with them. Here's the rule of thumb. Cook with saturated fats. Do not cook with polyunsaturated fats or vegetable oils. Use those raw in their virgin state. And then cook with your animal fats like lard, bacon grease. And then the two vegan saturated fats are coconut oil and palm oil. But all of those fats in their unadulterated form are amazingly beneficial for your body, and they literally can correct like hormonal imbalances and brain starvation, which is where Alpha-GPC comes into play. When you feed your brain with Alpha-GPC, which naturally increases levels of acetylcholine in your brain functions better. You have more focus, you have more cognitive function. This is just a fact. It's out there. There's clinical studies documenting it. But if you just type in Alpha-GPC, now not speaking about this product, but just type in Alpha-GPC and Alzheimer's, Alpha-GPC and stroke reduction. The studies are incredible. I can't say any more, sorry. But I can say that in many European countries and some Asian countries, Alpha-GPC is actually prescribed to people with Alzheimer's because it increases their cognitive awareness, it increases their quality of life. It has valid peer-reviewed clinical studies. And yet it's so simple. It's just fat. Your brain needs fat. And we're a fat-free society. Everything we see is low fat, no fat, right? How many of you out there buy 2% milk? Just because it's normal and that's what you buy now. You should be buying whole milk. You want as much fat from the milk as you get. Honestly, you shouldn't even be drinking milk. But you can get good fermented fats in the form of yogurts and cheeses. Only I'm not talking about the yogurt, unfortunately, that you buy in the store. I know it's really hard. Every time I say something's good for you, then you guys go out and get it. And then I say that what you bought is bad for you. It's hard. You have to read the labels because I'm not going to call out a brand here, but very popular brand. They taste so yummy. Read the ingredients. The first ingredient is like water. The second ingredient is like xanthan gum or pectin or carrageenan. That's a thickening agent. So there's no fat in it. And then it's fruits, and then it's flavors, and then it's sugar. It's like, it looks like yogurt, it tastes like yogurt, but there's zero actual fat. Yogurt is made from milk fat, okay? Cheeses are made from milk fat. And if you can't get that, that's what dietary supplements are for. Since you can't buy it in the store anymore, supplement it in your diet, okay? Alpha-GPC is an amazing ingredient. We have another fat in Clarity though. So Clarity has two beneficial types of fat. The other one is phosphatidylserine. Phospholipids, lipid meaning fat, come from like sunflower oil. A lot of these are produced in Ukraine. Sunflower is grown everywhere in Ukraine, but they have literally tens of thousands of acres of these beautiful sunflower fields there. And one of the cool things they learned to do with this sunflower oil is extract these phospholipids. And phospholipids, maybe you've heard that term before because I've used them in my liposomal formulas. I create liposomes using phospholipids, and so does the pharmaceutical industry. It's why Ukraine, I think, is such an important country to Big Pharma, because that's where all the phospholipids come from. So they can't make a lot of their drugs without that. But let's move on. One of my favorite ingredients in Clarity, it supports healthy cognitive function, is Vinpocetine. Vinpocetine. Vinpocetine actually is a prescription drug in almost every country outside of the United States. In fact, it's one of the problems we have with like exporting Clarity is because Vinpocetine is a drug for Alzheimer's and a drug for dementia patients. In fact, it's 5 milligrams in most Asian countries and 10 milligrams is a prescription in Europe. Now, in Clarity, we have 1 milligram, so we have well under the prescription dose. However, I do want to read just one safety study so that you can feel safe about taking something that's been classified as a drug in other countries. In 1986, Vinpocetine has been around for a long time, all right? But in 1986, Dr. J. Werner conducted a clinical study on the safety and efficacy of Vinpocetine and began by injecting 40 milligrams daily into his stroke patients who had cognitive dysfunction in their brain. They'd had a stroke, a portion of their brain had died, and usually that means half your face is hanging down and you can't speak clearly and things like that, right? Not only did he see tremendous results in recovery, 0.5% of his patients began to suffer from an increase in blood pressure. I'm going to repeat that again because most people just heard the last part. Oh, you get an increase in blood pressure? 0.5% of his patients, okay? Half a person out of every 100. So in 200 people, one person began experiencing an increase in blood pressure at 40 milligrams a day. We have 1 milligram. The clinical dose for Vinpocetine is 10 milligrams, so he 4 times the dose. And he was doing it intravenously. Now, I will admit, when you take a strip, you get pretty much what you put in your mouth is what gets in your bloodstream. It's called buccal absorption. Watch last week's training for that, all right? But none of his patients had adverse reactions except a slight increase in blood pressure, 1 out of every 200 of his patients, okay? That's how safe Vinpocetine is. And yet, the studies behind it are amazing. It's a great product, and it's one of the reasons why I had to have it in Clarity. It's my favorite thing to take. Now, I take sometimes 3, sometimes up to 5 of these strips throughout the day. I'm just going to tell you my personal story. I had tinnitus from my first time getting COVID, and it's usually there for me. But I find that on days when I take 3 to 5 of these, I don't hear the ringing. I'm not going to associate that with curing or anything like that because it's there. It's still there sometimes, but I don't hear it when I take 3 to 5 of these. That's just my personal story. Huperzine A is another wonderful ingredient. Now, Huperzine A is a wonderful phytochemical that comes from a moss in China. It's Chinese club moss, all right? But clear back in the 1980s, this was discovered that it increased the levels of acetylcholine. So we just talked about Alpha-GPC also increasing the levels of acetylcholine. Well, Huperzine A does the same thing. So you're getting like a double whammy increase of acetylcholine, and acetylcholine is the nutrient your brain feeds off of. So think of Clarity as a brain superfood, all right? It literally is supplementing your diet so that you can increase your healthy fat content and then boost your body's own production of acetylcholine, which is another healthy fat. So all of these things came together in one simple, easy to use, dissolvable oral strip that is so easy to share. If you guys really want to build your business, now we're talking about the business side of it, but only for a second, share Clarity. Carry 4 or 5 of these around in your pocket. And if you forget to give them out, you can take them. But if you don't forget and you give these out like candy, put a little sticker with your phone number on the back of it or something. If you're handing 3 or 4 of these out a day and you're not enrolling 2 new customers a week, then your follow-up sucks. That's all I'm going to say about that. Follow up with people that you give strips with because they're going to love Clarity and they're going to ask for more and just say, oh, you want more? Here's a link to go buy it. Or hand them 1 or 2 more and then give them the link to go buy it. Something like that. Or hand them 1 or 2 more and say, give these to your friend and then give them your link to go buy it. Either way, there's 100 ways to do this, but Clarity is easily one of the easiest ways to share with people the benefits, the wonderful products here at LifeWise. So thank you for joining me tonight. I appreciate your time. It does take time out of each of your nights, and I so appreciate that. And I would appreciate it even more if you would not only like it, but share with everyone, tag people that you think could use this. If you know anybody who knows somebody who could use Clarity, tag them in this training tonight. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening. Good night.